Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scriptures for October the 7th. Your readings today find you in Jeremiah chapter 10 and chapter 11, Colossians chapter 3 verses 18 through 25, and Colossians 4, and Psalm chapter 78 verses 56 through 72. Oh, and don't forget Proverbs 24, 28, and 29. So Colossians 3 verses 18 through 25 is another one of those sets of verses, as I warned, that are fairly heavily politicized. People read these verses and on both sides of the political spectrum abuse them and misuse them and misread them. I remember back in 1999-2000 when the Southern Baptist Convention made national news because they affirmed their Baptist faith and message, and they used these verses and said, "Wives, submit to your husbands." And that's where the media stopped. They're like, "How dare you tell women to submit to men?" And they, in some ways, they had a point, because let's be honest, those on the super conservative side have used these at times to let men have free reign over women and give them backup. And I've seen conservative churches misuse these verses to allow women to be abused, and that's not healthy and okay. So we're going to dive in on these verses here for a minute and really look at what it says, because the truth is, everyone is held accountable in these verses. Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Now, what does it mean to be as is fitting in the Lord? And what exactly does it mean to submit? Well, in this case, submit means to serve. It means to recognize that God has given a complementary relationship to men and women, meaning that both men and women are created equal, and yet God has given specific responsibilities to both men and women. So in this case, when it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands," they're saying, wives, serve your husband. Love your husband. Be a servant to your husband. Now, people will look at this and go, "Hold on a minute here, Jeremy. That just sounds like women are supposed to be slaves." No, and that's not even what Paul is saying here. As a matter of fact, if you read all of the New Testament, talks about how we are supposed to serve one another. We're supposed to love one another. Those words, love and serve, are oftentimes interchanged to use. As a matter of fact, if you look at the very next verse, what does it say to husbands? Husbands, love your wives. How do you love your wife? Well, you serve her. Matter of fact, Paul goes on and says, don't be harsh with them. This is a warning against our tendency to use authority to abuse. And that's not okay, and that's not what's good here. This is not good. Instead, what they're telling us, and Paul talks about it in other parts too, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Be servants, be sacrificial servants. Basically, wives, be a sacrificial servant to your husband. Husbands, be a sacrificial servant to your wife. Serve and love one another. That's actually the basis of marriage, is being humble towards one another, serving one another, and lifting one another up so that they can become the best person that God wants them to be. That's what it's really talking about here. It's not talking about better or worse or hierarchy of boss or not. That's not what it's saying. It's simply saying, serve one another. Verse 20, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Children, serve your mom and dad. Love your mom and dad. Fathers, do not provoke your children. Here's the second warning that we get from Paul. Paul first said to husbands, don't be harsh to your wives. Now he's saying, do not be harsh to your children. Men, pay attention. You need to recognize your natural sinful state is to be harsh, is to lord over, to dominate, to use your physical strength to dominate. It's not okay, ever, in any way, shape, or form. We are to serve. And then Paul goes and talks about bondservants. Obey everything. And then it talks about whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord. In other words, serve, 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 serve. Serve in love. Submit in love. Do not be harsh in love. Obey in love. Everything here is talking about how we are to make ourselves less and make other people more. That's what John the Baptist said. I must become less so that he can become more. That's what these verses are talking about. This is not about hierarchy. This is not about dominance. This is not about any of those things. This is the exact opposite. This is about being a servant for one another. And Paul goes on to continue these things. He talks about masters in chapter 4, verse 1. Treat your bondservants justly and fairly. In other words, serve, love, consider others better than yourself. The very definition of humility. Love and serve. Okay, that's it for today. We will talk more next time.